Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is our Community Connections, and today we have a very special guest, Captain Washburn. She's the Southern Division Commander, and I want to start by saying my staff is standing by for people who want to submit questions either via Facebook or on Zoom. So please do submit your questions in the appropriate boxes or chat boxes, and we'll get to as many as we can. Well, let me start with bringing in some updates here from our District 10. First, I want to let you know that there's a lot of boards and commissions that people could serve on, and this is a great way to give back to the community, let your voices be heard, and advise the council. So I'm asking people to please visit the city clerk's page at sanjoseca.gov to apply for the many positions that are open. There's the Clean Energy Commission, the Boards of Fair Political Practices, Parks and Recreation, which is a great one to serve on. It's a great commission, and the Charter Commission, which is going to be determining the future political atmosphere of San Jose. So I'm inviting anybody who wants to apply to please do as soon as possible. I also want to announce that the San Jose Public Library is handing out wireless hotspots. So if you need Wi-Fi hotspot for your children, the library is allowing you to check it out with a library card, and or you can visit to reserve one. You should visit sjpl.org/hotspot to reserve a hotspot for your family if you need it for school, or if you can't afford a hotspot for your family. This is another public service that the city public library is doing. On public safety, I've heard a number of complaints about illegal sideshows, drag racing, and other issues, and we're going to get to a lot of those topics today. But I do want you to know that SJPD is doing a media outreach about illegal sideshows, and I'm sure that Captain is going to address many of these issues when we get to her a little bit later. And I want to let you know that we are, you know, on the topic of policing, a lot of people, there's a lot of turmoil out there, and you know, people talking about defunding police, and I think that most people wanted to see a great accountable police department serving our community, and to that effect, the city council is continuously improving our police department. We've been doing it for many years within, you know, the internal police auditor. And, you know, we've been reforming the police department for many years. And our latest meeting, City Council approved a ban on rubber bullets for the purposes of crowd control. And they can still use it for violent individuals instead of more lethal weapons. So the SJPD also changed its duty manual to ban no-knock warrants, except for under very limited circumstances. So please, you know, police have a difficult job, and we want to make sure that they can do their job effectively and be accountable at the same time. I also, you know, want to thank our police department for continuously looking for ways to improve. Next, I want to talk about the Almaden Valley Community Association that recently held a ballot measure forum. And they discussed a lot of different topics, different measures, and boy, this ballot is going to be full of measures to vote on. So check out their Facebook page at facebook.com/AVCASJ to watch the forum. They had the pro and con on many different issues. And the next forum is scheduled for October 12th at 7 p.m. And it'll be a forum between for the state Senate candidates and additional ballot measures. So, anyway, before we go on, we're going to be introducing Captain Washburn. I have one of my staff members who's going to be reading off her extensive bio, and I've been delighted to be serving with the captain for a few months now. We really, I don't know, have we met face to face? I don't think we have, but she is one of the hardest working captains in our entire city, and I'm going to have my staff read her bio real quickly here.
All right. Captain Elle Washburn is a 25-plus year veteran of the San Jose Police Department. She was born in San Jose and raised in nearby Milpitas, where her family still resides. She started the SJPD in May 1994 as a police dispatcher. After 4 years, she became a police officer and attended the San Jose Police Academy at Evergreen College. As an officer, Elle worked patrol, the Metro Unit, and narcotic covert investigations. Promoted to sergeant in 2008, Elle worked patrol, the administrative unit, and research and development, where she led the body-worn camera project for the SJPD. Promoted to lieutenant in 2015, Elle worked patrol and special operations, where she oversaw the Metro Unit, Violent Crime Enforcement Team, the Street Crimes Unit, and the DEA Task Force. Elle was recently promoted to captain in February 2020 and is assigned to the Southern Division, where she is working hard to promote community engagement and furthering effective deployment strategies. Elle was in SVO's Leadership San Jose program, class of 2017, and is a graduate of St. Mary's College of California. She is currently enrolled in graduate school at St. Mary's and working toward her master's degree in leadership. She is a native to Bay Area, enjoys adventure sports, and is enthusiastic about her chosen profession of law enforcement.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian, and I appreciate having our captain with us today. Maybe you can unmute yourself, Captain, and we could dive into one of the hottest topics that I get at my council office. Looks like, yeah, there you go. We get a lot of calls about, speeding, drag racing, sideshows. I know you published, well, you gave me some statistics to publish this week, but why don't you tell us a little bit about those statistics and what the SJPD is doing, especially in District 10?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. I'm very humbled to be here today and appreciate the opportunity to reach out through Facebook with Councilmember Khamis. So it's a great opportunity to work together and also communicate how the police department is serving the residents of District 10. So yes, the topic of speeding and sideshows, I'll put those under the same kind of overarching topic, and that is traffic and traffic enforcement. They're somewhat related. So what I can tell you is that sideshows are a problem that we have had in the past. As you know, I believe it was last year, we came up with the spectator ordinance in order to be able to cite spectators at illegal sideshows. They could be inherently dangerous. Oftentimes they grow very large, take over intersections, not only disrupt neighborhoods and communities, but oftentimes we see violent acts stemming from really large and uncontrolled sideshows. So the spectator ordinance is extremely helpful. So I'll talk about what we're doing short-term and some long-term strategies that I have. I know it, like I said, it's a problem that we've had over the years. We've kind of developed and enhanced our strategies and how we respond to sideshows, and just some of the challenges that we're looking at right now. So with the sideshows in the short term, a lot of times we will train officers in what we call racer enforcement details. So we call those red trained officers. They do have specialties where they get trained by the Bureau of Automotive Repair and how to identify illegal exhaust and things like that. So a lot of times we do get timely intelligence. A lot of times we do know when a sideshow is going to occur in advance. Many of them are still spontaneous. We will often have more than one at the same time. So, depending on the night of the week, we could have a couple of small sideshows throughout the city and large sideshows. I personally believe that the Southern Division in general is impacted the most because we do have a lot of expressways and rural areas still that are kind of open and expansive. So when we do get the timely intelligence about the sideshows in advance, I do call in an overtime team. Our overtime budget is limited, but I did get some approval to bring the team in, and they will go out in an enforcement and undercover capacity to do some surveillance of these sideshows. That enables us to gather information when it's occurring, who the primary offenders are, helps us maybe to identify who the organizers are of those events. And so officers will then, after observing some of the illegal activity, will then affect enforcement stops. So that could be pedestrian stops where we're citing people for the spectator ordinance, vehicle stops now where we're inspecting the vehicles for various different maybe modifications to a car that are not street legal, in which case they have to go see the referee at the DMV and get their vehicle fixed. Depending on what's occurring, if they're actually drag racing or if they exceed 100 miles an hour, we can actually issue a criminal citation and impound the vehicle on the spot. So we have found that the best way to have an effect and to prevent the sideshows from coming to San Jose at all is to impound a car. These are 30-day impounds. It does cost a lot for somebody to get the car out of impound, and that's really the biggest deterrent that we have. Some of the challenges we face as it relates to enforcement are, remember, we're dealing more often than not with traffic violations, non-violent crime. And so if somebody fails to yield to law enforcement, unless they have other on-view charges like they were involved in a shooting, the officers are not going to pursue because it doesn't fit within our pursuit policy. So we have to kind of have that balancing test. So oftentimes that's why it's really important for us to try to get license plate information. We can do follow-up investigations and try to track down the vehicle later and impound it at a later time. As the council member mentioned, I believe it was on Friday, there was some messaging that was done in coordination with City Council as well as with our media relations unit, trying to get the PSA out. Don't come to San Jose. Because if you do, we're going to find you, we're going to cite you, and we're going to impound your vehicle. And so we're really trying to have that deterrent in addition to the enforcement. I can tell you that after that media piece on Friday, we did have a number of sideshows over the weekend. I did pull some stats, and this is just from the 19th, which was Saturday, through the 22nd, which was Tuesday. We had a bunch of different enforcement that took place with an overtime team as well as the patrol officers. We do have some regular officers that are assigned a beat that do have the specialty training, and we pull them out of the beat structure when we know we have a sideshow that's going to occur. The challenge there is that they're no longer serving their beat. They're having to perform this collateral assignment. But again, that's the decision we have to make in managing our resources. If there's no other hot call that's working, that's resource heavy, such as a large perimeter, we can then pull those assets out of patrol and assign them to this special activity. So over the weekend, we did issue 30 citations, and that does include the spectator ordinance. So that's a pretty high number in my experience. We did issue 8 criminal citations, and that would be for things like reckless driving and speed contests, which are in fact misdemeanors and are heard in criminal court, not traffic court. We did impound 6 vehicles. We arrested 1 person for an arrest warrant. 1 person actually got booked for racing, which tells me it was probably a pretty egregious violation. We issued 2 re-examination of drivers, which means they have to go to the DMV and have their privilege to drive in the state of California reevaluated by the Department of Motor Vehicles. And we do have 5 cases in which we are following up. And the officers that are specialty trained are pretty adept at conducting that investigation, finding the car at a later time, and then doing that 30-day impound. There was another large sideshow on the 22nd at the Bass Pro Shop where the sergeant said several people were stopped and cited. I don't have those specific numbers. So the numbers that I did provide are actually in fact larger. And again, that was just Saturday through Tuesday. So we will continue this type of enforcement. Unfortunately, we can't be everywhere at the same time. We have to really kind of go towards the intel that we have and where the large shows are. If you do see a sideshow, do call 911 and report it. Things we're looking for are the number of vehicles, where they are, their types of behavior and activity. If you have specific vehicle description and license plates, that is extremely helpful to provide to the dispatcher so we can get that out to the officers at a minimum, maybe to do follow-up. What I can tell you is there's a lot of people that are coming to San Jose from other cities and counties. I was told that one gentleman that was cited on the 22nd at Bass Pro Shops is from Southern California. He's been cited a number of times. And he continues to come up to San Jose to engage in this activity. Probably to his credit, he is not fleeing from the police, and that is why we have not yet impounded his vehicle, because he probably would have lost it by now. He's in fact yielding and taking his ticket. But he is continuing to behave, in that way, and we do see that a lot. So that's in the short term. In the long term, I'm really working to prioritize traffic enforcement as a whole in the city of San Jose. For a city of 1.1 million people, I can tell you we have 10 motor officers, which is really sad. When I came on in 1994, we had in excess of 4 times that. You know, and they have their own priorities. The areas they need to work are high traffic fatality areas, and really those resources are limited. Because we have a young department, we currently, to my knowledge, I don't have any officers that are radar trained in the Southern Division. So I don't have patrol that can go out and set up on Almaden Expressway, pull cars over in excess of speed and issue that. In order to train officers, we need to purchase the equipment and we need to send them to training. I was told by the traffic enforcement unit that is a 40-hour class, which means I need to pull the officers out of patrol for an entire work week to put them through that training. So I am messaging to my deputy chief that we need to, you know, we obviously, for the safety of the community and our officers, because an officer, I believe over the weekend, was struck at downtown by somebody who was intoxicated and ran a stop sign, and the officer went to the hospital. So we all are experiencing the effects of traffic going unabated. You know, that's kind of where we're at. We are working to prioritize it, to get an interest list of officers. And quite honestly, if I don't get officers that want to sign up for radar, I'm going to tell them that they're going to, you know, we're going to handpick those junior officers to attend radar training, because we need to bring that back. We do have our Southern Division page through sjpd.org, when you can list complaints, questions, and a lot of times we get traffic complaints through that if it's not an immediate emergency. And a lot of times what we can do is I'll coordinate with the traffic enforcement unit to get a speed trailer out to an area, and they'll drop that there. And they do come out and post up and do some traffic enforcement. I've recently got them to come out and issue some warnings and citations at Judith and Tradewinds, for example. That's a large intersection that has a lot of problems, people rolling right through without stopping and creating a hazard for the kids in the area. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I do feel that we could be doing more as it relates to traffic enforcement. A lot of it is just limitations as it relates to resources and equipment and training. And so it's a matter of prioritizing it and keeping it on our radar despite everything else that might be happening in the city. Because if we don't start now, what we're going to do is find ourselves down the road several months, and we're going to be exactly where we are. So that is my report on traffic and sideshows, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions as it relates to that topic.
Yeah, well, I actually have pages worth of questions here, but I'm going to ask you a few questions before we go to the questions from the audience. And by the way, I did back you up on that. I did talk to Acting Chief Knopf just a few hours ago and told him about this and what we need to bump up the traffic units. So I've already done that just a couple hours ago. All right, so other complaints I get, you know, in my district is, you know, burglaries, package thefts, car break-ins. Of late, we've actually had entire cars missing. And a lot of times I tell them that our police are working really hard, and we do catch a lot of criminals. And I know, because you tell me you and Chief Garcia tell me, hey, we caught this burglary ring and blah, blah, blah. But I've been telling people that actually the laws in this state have been working against us. Prop 47, 57, Prop 36, prison realignment. A lot of criminals are actually getting released from jail much earlier than they used to, and criminals. And I, you know, after reading Prop 20, for example, I find out that people are getting out of jail, are allowed to get out on parole because their crimes have been reduced from violent felonies to non-violent felonies. And I was shocked to hear that, for example, human trafficking and abduction of a minor for prostitution and rape of an unconscious person, drive-by shootings, felony domestic violence, and solicitation to commit murder are no longer violent felonies, and they can be paroled out. And so, you know, can you tell us how hard you guys are working to catch burglars, and I, look, thankfully we don't have a whole lot of murder in our city. But people waking up and not seeing their car in the morning, it gives you a sense of loss of power, of violation. And I personally have been burglared in my own home, and so I'm. What do we tell people? And I've been telling people, frankly, to vote for Prop 20, which reverses some of these things. But what do you tell people about what to do when they get violated like that?
Right. So it does have a sense of, one step forward, two steps back. And I can certainly give you a couple of examples where we have, in fact, experienced a high rate of recidivism as it relates to criminal enforcement. So the one thing I can tell you, for the Southern Division as a whole, and I realize that's inclusive of District 10, and this is an example of how the coordinated efforts of the police department can make a difference. So as you stated, I came to Southern Division in February. I've been here about 8 months. And we had been leading the city, because there's 4 divisions. We had been leading the city in burglary. It was a really large issue. So the first quarter that I was here, we really started looking at the information and the evidence. In the third quarter, we really kind of started getting organized and having strategies and working with crime prevention and crime analysis. And then in this last quarter that ended at the end of June, I was able to report out that even though Southern Division had been #1 in the city with burglaries since I can remember, we actually came in at #3, so 3 out of 4. So there was a big reduction, 18% from the prior year in burglary. So that's good. At the same time, what I can tell you is during these concerted efforts to arrest people that were victimizing the businesses that are now empty due to COVID. So we saw a reduction in some residential burglaries because people are home, and an increase in schools and or commercial burglary. We were arresting people who had pending cases. People that were breaking into the businesses, stealing the safes, the iPads, that have river rocks, right? A lot of times they're either forcing entry with a pry bar or using river rocks to break entry. Were basically out of jail on a zero bail and had been previously arrested. And so, that's the frustration there, in that we are going out, we are being coordinated, we are making arrests, and yet we're seeing the same people being arrested over and over. The second example I'll give you actually stems from District 10, Colony Green. You might be familiar with this case, I think.
Definitely.
Okay,
this
so
yes.
This is a great example because it came in originally as crazy driving, speeding motorcycles in the area of Marshall Cottle Park on Chenoweth. So we mobilized that team that goes out and does a lot of the sideshow traffic enforcement that I mentioned. They did some surveillance. They ended up arresting the primary involved in that case. I think his associate was on parole. There was a stolen handgun, narcotics, several recovered stolen vehicles. Like, in my opinion, a prolific criminal who has been victimizing people probably in the city of San Jose. I believe and he had 300 pounds of marijuana. One of the vehicles we recovered was, in fact,
300 pounds. Wow.
So one of the problems one of the vehicles stolen was, in fact, a tractor, a man's tractor on the trailer still, that we were able to release in the field to the gentleman to whom it belonged. What I can tell you is that person was not held in custody. Right now, there's zero bail at the jail due to COVID, and it's classified as a non-violent crime. You can be a felon with a firearm, and as long as you're not using it on somebody to commit a violent act, you're not going to be held. I know for a fact our Special Operations Division arrested a drug dealer with an assault weapon and a kilo of narcotics, and that suspect was not held. That might have been one of those cases that the chief highlighted before he went out. That case on Colony Green, we've arrested him 4 times. Each and every time he gets out and commits similar acts, we actually think he was running a chop shop at the house. So we were trying to get the DA's office engaged on a deeper level for like organized crime or something. The sergeant in charge of that investigation got an arrest warrant for the subject, but it was zero bail. So there's a frustration there for law enforcement. He's like, I'm starting to fatigue over this case. Like, we're really trying to make a difference. We're spending a lot of time and resources, and a lot of times what we're seeing is the recidivism rate increasing. Now, on the one hand, I understand, my chief has said it, I grew up in this department, you can't arrest your way out of a situation, right? And any issue that's taking place, whether it be mental health, issues related to homelessness, right? The law enforcement partners are just one seat at the table. There's many other people involved in really affecting long-term solutions to these problems. So, not to get off on the topic of criminal justice reform, which should and does need to take place, right? It needs to be thoughtful. We need to be smart about how we implement these rules and laws and think about that, because that is, in fact, to your point, an ongoing challenge as it relates to auto theft. I know in the period that I queried for tonight, July 1st to present, today, we have had 91 cars stolen in your district alone, right? When
In
you
my
compare
district
that
alone?
in your district alone since July 1st.
Holy cow.
If you compare that to the entire Southern Division, 352 cars stolen. And that's nothing when you look at Western Division. These stats are from last week for the other divisions, 545 cars stolen. So I got a flyer today from our vehicular crimes unit that did say that we saw a 44.9% increase in auto theft cases from the previous quarter. 44% increase. And, it's not because officers aren't being vigilant, because I do pull the stats on proactive, what I call touches, right? I've had 982 proactive touches by officers in their free patrol time. That's my job, is to direct them and to prioritize how they spend their free patrol time, right? Our divisional priorities are to reduce aggravated assault. So a lot of times that's enforcement of gang members, trying to seize illegal firearms off the streets. Certainly reduction of burglaries, commercial, residential, and schools. And we did see that reduction. And then the last is the community engagement, which is inclusive of quality of life. But, and here's another thing. The district attorney's office sends out these updates. The 0 bail orders are still in place. And to this point during COVID, we have only handled certain kinds of cases, time not waived, in custody, domestic violence. Last week, the court reopened felony case management departments, allowing more felonies to resume normal hearings. So what we're seeing is, are these cases even being heard? And so, yeah, those are some of the challenges, right? We do our part. We could do more. We could always do better. We're certainly not perfect. But you have to also look at the whole system, and is it working, in tandem? Are we kind of moving all in the same direction, or are there things that are working against us? And I can't say for sure that the 0 bail and some of these, California laws and measures are the cause, right? There's certainly a correlation there. We have to be careful when we claim causation, but it's certainly part of the conversation that we're having. And
I could tell you that I feel as, and I think this chief said it best when he said that the pendulum of justice has swung too far to the side of the criminal. And that was long ago, before they even released the last 50,000 prisoners after COVID. And I'm, as a council member, it's frustrating because people call me because they feel unempowered. I could tell you that and I'm saying this as a person and a leader, and it doesn't reflect the city's opinion, but if we don't pass Prop 20, I don't think that we have a right to complain about what happens with our personal property. Anyway, I tell you what, we've already gotten 21 questions and 5 comments. Let me go ahead. I want the public to be part of this conversation. So let me jump to the public and start taking questions. Adrian, could you take questions? And I from the public, I actually have 10 pages of questions, but I don't want to read them all. Many of them were actually traffic related, speeding. Could you just briefly tell us what people could do to report if they see, or if they see vehicles racing, doing donuts, what have you? What do they do?
Yeah, if it's happening in the here and the now, and it's hazardous or dangerous to the community, and that's their perception, I would call 911. If the dispatcher is busy with other calls or feels that they want to triage that and kick it to non-emergency, then they'll transfer you directly to the non-emergency line. I understand a lot of people get lost in the queue when they call 311, and I can appreciate that. So if it's happening right then and there, again, call 911, report that information, because then it gets out in a timely fashion and it's not delayed. And certainly it needs to be triaged with other pending calls, depending on what we have resources available in that moment. If it's an ongoing or chronic issue, maybe it's not happening at that moment or it's already ended, you can do a couple different things. If you go to sjpd.org, our traffic enforcement unit page, and I know our crime prevention unit often refers people to that page, there's an online template that you can fill out requesting some added enforcement of that area. You always can go to sjpd.org, and if you go to the Southern Division, you just type Southern Division or Southern in the little search field, that'll take you to my page. My photo's not there yet, but there's that online form that you can fill out and give us that information. You know, on Fridays between around midnight for the last 3 weeks, we've had this type of problem, and then just try to provide some specificity. Anytime you fill that form out on the Southern page, it shoots an email directly to me, as well as the 3 members on my very amazing crime prevention team. I have 3 crime prevention unit specialists that are specifically assigned to my division, and they kind of divvy up all the different districts. They too get that same email, and sometimes, you know, depending on the nature of the query or statement or complaint, they may respond, or I may respond, or we may all respond. So those kind of the here and the now, and then what you could do kind of more long-term follow-up is go through sjpd.org and reach me that way.
Okay, Adrian, can we go to the questions, please?
We can.
We can try to answer them as fast as possible. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to do rapid fire.
Yeah, there's tons of them coming. There's tons of them coming in. Go ahead.
Yeah, this first one's actually kind of loaded. It's from Steve, and it's about transparency as a whole. And he mentioned that the Santa Clara Police has a police blotter that they publish online every day. And he wants to know if San Jose can implement that. And similarly, he's asking that in the past, police made 24-hour incident reports available on newspapers. Today, we have no info regarding that. And he wants to know what can be done about that. And lastly, San Jose police have encrypted their radio traffic. And why is that? And how can we get more transparency?
Sure. Okay, so let me talk to the radio. So the San Jose Police Department participated in the Santa Clara County Interoperability Radio Project. There were brand new repeaters that were set up. This is a large, long-term project that finally came to fruition, and it was a collective decision, not just the San Jose Police Department, I believe, to encrypt those channels for officer safety reasons. So a lot of times we would end up seeing sometimes bad guys with scanners. They're able to hear that. And that's why we actually had certain policies to do what we call MDC dispatch, because we didn't want to say certain things on the radio. So I think that's just a byproduct of the day and age that we're in. Technology certainly is advancing, and I can see how that can give the appearance of a lack of transparency. I do believe that's probably one of those situations where we are weighting more heavily on the side of safety for law enforcement. So again, it wasn't a decision the San Jose PD made in a vacuum. We were part of this new project where the encryption became an option where it wasn't before. As far as the blotter, so I did see that question on email earlier. I did go to sjpd.org, and I believe if you type in crime stats, it'll take you to a page, and a lot of it is automated now. There's crime mapping, crimereports.com. You know, if you think about it, 10th largest city in the nation, sometimes it's a bandwidth issue, right? Publishing things in the newspaper. I know small agencies or you know, small towns still do that. I think what the San Jose Police Department is now doing is anything that is of significance or note. Like, let's say I'm in the field on a large case, we will coordinate with the media relations unit, and our PIOs will oftentimes do a press release if there's something large that's working or something of public interest. Certainly the chief will come out and do press release after a large incident where somebody was hurt or injured. But a lot of that is just now automated. Certainly if I attend a community meeting, such as I did for tonight, I'm going to be prepping those stats. I have my own dashboard that is not a public portal. It's called CrimeView Dashboard, where I could build and do queries in there. And oftentimes we're providing that to crime prevention specialists that do neighborhood watch meetings, neighborhood association meetings. So there's a lot of ways in order to make that available, but just as far as doing it on a regular basis in that, what I'm gonna call, and I mean no offense, but like analog of publishing it in a paper is just not something that is as feasible as these technological platforms that now exist through our website. Hopefully that answers your question.
And if you read my newsletter, I often publish statistics that our captain gives me.
Yes,
okay,
I do publish a quarterly report for the council offices.
And next question, please.
All right, next question is from Steve, and the question is, what tactics are police allowed to use to control violent crowds, and are they effective?
What tactics we are allowed to use to control violent crowds, and are they effective? Well, there's crowd management strategies, right, and crowd control strategies. So I think a lot of times it's going to depend on the type of crowd, right? If a crowd is protesting peacefully, if a crowd has devolved into violence, certainly we have our use of force continuum, and that continuum includes everything from voice and hands up to and including, as we saw downtown, the use of chemical weapons, I guess I'll put chemical agents, right, whether it's CS gas or different types of OC, which is like a pepper spray. In very narrow circumstances, they are allowed to use less lethal projectiles, batons. So I think what we need to understand is that we have a use of force policy. We call it the use of force continuum, right? And that policy can overlay in any type of situation, right? An officer has to be able to articulate, based on the totality of everything, be able to articulate the type of force that they use. We are accountable to every baton strike, all right? We're supposed to be accountable to every round. And so when they're being documented, they're actually referencing each and every use of force. So I think it's just really going to depend on that situation. Certainly if you haven't yet read the San Jose Police Department's After Action Report, which I know was made available through the council services, I would recommend reading that. It does drill down specifically into the different types of force options that were utilized during the most recent protests, which did include a number of violent acts. And so that is very informative. And it's open to the public, and it's a 200-page document. And I certainly would look at that, as well as if you go to our website, you can look at our duty manual, which parts of it are redacted, but I do understand it probably includes a lot of sections on our use of force. I mean, we could spend 2 hours talking about use of force. And so without having that document in front of me, I don't want to necessarily drill down on every type of force out there. I did mention some of those, and those are some of the resources that certainly I'd like to direct you to, so you can maybe, look at more detail and just make sure that, that's available for you, and you can look at those statements and those facts. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, and I did say some of the changes that we made at the beginning to the duty manual on use of force and on no warrant or no knock entry. And so at the beginning at the meeting, can you go to the next question, Adrian?
Yes, so our next question is probably addressed to both the captain and the council member, and it's a question about staffing. Both Trent and Ted wanted to know what's being done to increase recruitment of new officers. And Trent noted that we're far below the national average of police officers per citizen, and what's being done to mitigate that.
Well, I could start by saying that we are definitely not defunding our police department. We are in a budget crunch, and I don't know, Adrian, why I think your face is on locked here or something. But in any case, the department is being fully funded this year. We've actually increased their funding every year for the last 4 years. And I think the captain could tell you a little bit more about what we're doing for recruiting, but we're recruiting nationally for our police department. And, my discussions with the acting chief this afternoon, he said that recruitment is still going well in our PD. Despite the fact that many other departments, their recruiting is not going so well. I think that our police are seen as a very professional force, you know, and are an attractive place to work. But I'll let the captain, but mainly on our end as a council, we have the purse strings, and our purse strings did not shut on our police department this year. Please continue. In fact, we continue something called the Hire Ahead programs even. So go ahead and explain if you can.
Sure, yeah, and I certainly echo what Councilmember Khamis said about the support of council. We as a city are in a budget crunch, and those are just, you know, that's the climate that we're in, and the situation with which we need to work through. At the same time, what I can tell you is a few years back, we did revitalize and revamp, actually when my boss right now, Deputy Chief Heather Randall, was in charge of recruitment, revamped our recruitment platform and our recruitment matrices and strategies and how we went about that. And we're really working now, as the council member said, to go on a national level, really wanting to make sure that, you know, we're going to locations like colleges, universities, military bases and things like that, where it's going to be more bang for our buck. So we're not, you know, flying to Hawaii and you know, we're going to get one or two recruits. We're really trying to maximize the resources that we, but we are looking nationally. We're working really hard to build a diverse organization that is reflective of our community. I think the chief mentioned in our last academy, we had at least 15 different languages that were spoken. And so right now we did bump our numbers up, right? These are approved by council. We're budgeted for 1,159 officers. 1,130 of those are filled. And if you reduce the recruits in the academy and some of the injuries that we have right now, we have full duty sworn 957 officers. Is that lower than the national average? Yes. If you look at, I'm looking on my wall at a 2016 FBI report, the San Jose Police Department had, like, you know, 9 officers for 939, or we had like 1 in 1,000. And so it's just, it's lower on par. You know, if we have 9 officers, San Diego has like 13. You know, the San Jose Police Department, during a lot of the pension reform, and when we used to be 1,400, right? We shrank for a number of different reasons. We learned to do more with less. I like to think that we're good at what we do, right? We learned how to leverage what we do have. And so while that is true, at the same time, we are still building. We are actively recruiting. We're having still approximately 3 academies a year. There are some restrictions with COVID and having not to overlap as much as we did before, but we have an academy that has an inspection coming up. We've got recruits in the program. We've got another one started in the fall. So
how many are in the academy?
Gosh, I don't know the exact number, but they're large academies. I mean, as compared to years ago, what we had 6 to 12. I mean, we're pushing 50. And so they're what I consider to be pretty large academies, anywhere between like 45 and 60 recruits. We don't unfortunately retain them all because we do have high standards. We do still have college unit requirements. We are waiving some of those for military personnel with life experience, and that's one of our modifications that we made for military personnel. But you know, we're trying to be creative. We're working with the community to recruit really only the finest, and we are growing. I think what we're seeing still now is a lot of retirements because of the mass hirings of the 80s. And so we're not losing people before due to reasons other than just they're becoming retirement age. And I think that is across the board with a lot of departments. I think we are very marketable. We are still very large, diverse, have a number of units, and, you know, officers like working here. We are starting to now hire from other departments. That lateral program is really, it's coming back. We didn't see that for a long time, but we're hiring from San Francisco, from other departments, and officers are lateraling straight in from other agencies here at the San Jose Police Department. So,
you know, the one thing that I think that our police department enjoys is the fact that our community really supports them and loves our police department for the most part. There is some minority, very vocal people who may say otherwise, but I think at least in my district, I've done an outreach, and I would say that more than 90% of the people who responded said that we want our police department and don't defund it. Okay, Adrian, next question, please.
All right, I am now going to let Aaron speak to say his question live. So Aaron, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Perfect, thank you. I just wanted to know what can we would, or all of us do to reduce the encampments alongside 87. There's lots of drug use, garbage, tons of collection of just miscellaneous items to the point where it's blocking the trails and the paths, vehicles coming and going, and just generally unsafe, right, to use those byways for a lot of the, pedestrians and cyclists. I just wanted to ask that.
Thank you, Aaron, and I don't disagree. I'll be honest with you, I don't run along Guadalupe Creek anymore for a lot of the same reasons that you just expressed. Just the congestion, right? Even just some concerns about I feel like I'm now walking into somebody else's home when I'm trying to run on the trail. So I can appreciate that. What I'll start with is say that, the issue as it relates to the homelessness problem really transcends the resources of law enforcement. This is one of those topics that I mentioned earlier, where certainly we have a responsibility, we have a seat at that table. And so there are a number of things going on right now, whereas these encampments are continuing to grow. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that right now there's no abatements taking place, right? That is the responsibility of, I forget if it's called the homeless concerns. It's the responsibility of the city, right, to do those abatements. Due to COVID, they've been kind of reassigned and doing other things, feeding, right, the food distributions that we're doing. There's an emphasis now on the census. And so there's some city departments that are being redirected to working towards getting. And aren't taking place. It's my understanding. It's not the responsibility of the police department. But I know the city is doing trash collection. You can see the porta potties. And while some people think, well, all that's doing is continuing the problem, I mean, we have to be concerned about, we don't want human waste. We have to be concerned about sanitation, right? Whether it's the people that are using those byways or the people that are living there that are unhoused. So certainly we have a responsibility to continue our outreach. I know Homeless Services is continuing the outreach. I just came from a meeting with the Evans Lane Community Advisory Committee, and it's talking about the Evans Lane Bridge housing that's coming in there. And I know the city is making a concerted effort to reduce homelessness through bridge housing. So there's a lot of different layers to this. Where law enforcement has a responsibility is related to the criminal activity in the encampments. When I was in special operations, we have a unit that we started called the Street Crimes Unit. And so one of their responsibilities is to go into encampments and address the criminal element, right? They're not into abatement or anything like that. And even the Street Crimes Unit during COVID recalibrated and weren't going into encampments as much. They are back at it. They do have a deep queue. I'm constantly coordinating with the sergeant there and getting them into the high problem areas. But I hear you about 87. I see it a lot. I'm in direct communication with some of the residents that live out there on Amboy Drive, I think it is, that has an encampment behind them. If and when something does flare up into ongoing acts of criminal activity, we are making special cases out of certain things. And I have some community policing officers, and I work with my lieutenants to say, okay, we need to go into this encampment. There was somebody who assaulted somebody. We need to find that person, and we need to go in and provide some police services, see if there's any enforcement activity we can do. But keep in mind, you go into encampments, right? And if we're making arrests and issuing citations, right, are we solving the problem? Not really. And we're not abating them. So it's this challenging issue that really takes the collective resources of the county. All right, there's a high correlation between homelessness and substance abuse or addiction, and also mental health issues. So it's a compound issue. Certainly we have a role to play. I would say if you have a problem as it relates to the here and the now, something violent that's taking place, we need to call 911 and report it so we can get out there. Otherwise, if there's some specific concerns of a criminal nature, you certainly can bring that to my attention through sjpd.org. But it's something that, we as a city and as a county and as a community are doing some proactive measures. And I think what's really kind of holding us back a little bit right now is COVID and our level of activity and our response during this pandemic. Unfortunately, that's where we see that growth. And I don't know if Councilmember Khamis wants to weigh in on that piece of it.
Well,
that would be my
we've been told, and I'm pretty sure it was a directive from the state, that we cannot abate encampments because of COVID and health concerns. And so our office is no longer abating it. And but I have asked for more services. In fact, I made sure that trails were part of the $3 million extra funds that we allocated. I remember it was Tuesday, but sometimes I remember what day it passed, because our city council meetings are 16 hours long sometimes. And so I'm not sure if it was this week or last week, but I did ask for $3 million extra money. And I'm sorry, the mayor did that, but in that money, I did ask for a carve out for trails. And so, and it was accepted. And so I want to be clear, we also have to follow direction from the health department and the state health department. And right now they're telling us not to move homeless people, but we are creating tiny homes projects. There's 2 of them going up on near Monterey Road and Highway 101 interchanges. There's several other programs, hotel stays and voucher programs that we're offering, and some of them just also don't want to take advantage of it. There's a lot of mentally ill homeless people that I think the county has shirked the responsibility on taking care of. They won't implement Laura's Law, for example, that takes some of the most mentally ill people off the streets and get them help. I think they should be helping the mentally ill. It is their responsibility to do so. The drug addicted folks, they need to get mandatory help, but the laws right now are not being implemented in the county. And as long as they keep allowing this, we're going to keep having homelessness from those. The 2 big ones are drug addiction and mental illness, and the rest of them we're trying to handle through vouchers and the things that I just described. Let's go on to our next question.
All right, we have a question from Sue Dileanis, and Sue, if you'd like, we can unmute you to ask your question now. Looks like there you go. Go ahead.
I had asked a couple of questions. I'm not sure which one you're referring to. I know one of my questions was about a homeless woman that's been living under the bridge at the corner of Camden and Royalwood, and she's been there for years, and now she's sitting there all day, every day, ever since the shelter in place started. And so I was wondering if anything has been done or could be done about her.
I could tell you that we've reported, and I talked to housing a couple of days ago about encampments, and they told me that they have gone to every encampment and offered services more than 7 times to every place that's been reported. They've offered services for everyone, and this is what they tell me, and but we'd be happy to report it again. But the people who want services are we try to help them, and sometimes they don't fit well into homeless shelter, for example, because we don't allow pets and what have you. So if she has pets, that might be a problem. We're trying to rectify that to create some kind of kennel situation for homeless people that have pets. But I would say continue to report it, and we could follow up specifically to see if the staff has reached out to offer her services. And I think it's tragic that a woman would be staying under the bridge like that. If you reported it, our staff assured me that they have addressed every single reported thing. At least they told me 7 times, but I don't know. Maybe they didn't talk to her 7 times, but they said they've gone out 7 times last time I talked to them.
Am I back? I lost you for a minute.
Yeah, yes, you are. Well, let's go on to the next question.
All right, the next question is from Jocelyn, and she is asking, What approach is being taken to handle training to officers in mental health crises?
Yeah, so right now, every officer that comes through the police academy does attend 40-hour crisis intervention training. That is training that is put on by our crisis management unit in coordination with our mental health partners in Santa Clara County, one of which is Johnny Costa. And so that is, it's not just internal training, it's training that's really put on by professionals that are, working in issues related to homelessness, working in the hospitals and county mental health, and they're providing that training. So it's lecture-based, it's scenario-based. Again, it's 40 hours. In addition to that, right, the field training program, we also have some policies as it relates to tactical conduct. Some of the things that we teach are like de-escalation tactics, right? Time, distance, engaging people. When an officer is in the field and they're dealing with somebody in crisis, we do have some tools available to us. For example, we had a gentleman in a mental health crisis about a week and a half ago who had barricaded himself in his vehicle and was suicidal. I believe he wanted law enforcement to end his life, which obviously we weren't going to do. And we're able to call upon the mobile mental health team. So it's an emergency response team of clinically trained individuals that come out and provide additional support for the officers on scene, right, to slow things down, maybe try a different verbal tactic, different way to engage them. And we really work together as partners in the field. We also have a pilot that we're starting. I believe there's some grant money whereby we have officers that are, that partnership that I just described, they're doing it on a proactive level. So whether they're going out and engaging people that are in crisis, they're also going out proactively. So that example you gave me about the woman under the bridge, if she is being reported as, somebody who is very much maybe gravely disabled, or sometimes we get reports of people that don't really tip the scales to criminal behavior, but we could tell that, they're just having some challenges, they're yelling obscenities at people and whatnot. We can go out proactively and evaluate those individuals with this resource. I think it's going to come online in late October, which is just happy for me because I have another resource or tool available for these types of situations. So hopefully that answers your question. That's just what comes to mind right now, as far as dealing with a person suffering from a mental crisis. Certainly it's something that's on the forefront of how we respond, in a forced situation, whether or not we're dealing, in a family violence type of situation, right? There's always going to be, people are calling us because they're having a bad day. So that there's a high degree of people in some type of crisis right on that spectrum with whom we're dealing. And so it's certainly a priority for the police department to train our officers. So those are just a few examples.
Thank you. And I think, since we started a couple of minutes late, we'll end with maybe two more questions. Do you have time for two more questions, Captain?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, two more questions, then we'll have to end it.
All right, then. We have a question from Nancy, and she says that graffiti is visible on 101 and 280. Isn't there a city law regarding this? And how should the city and police force react to this?
Yeah, so graffiti is a crime, and I think I know the graffiti to which Nancy's referring. A lot of the graffiti along the highways are responsibility of Caltrans to clean up. What I can tell you is I personally know an officer in this department who worked for me in special operations and made the case on the subject who defaced the...
Uh-oh, I think we lost her.
The person,
Captain,
I think around...
Captain, you got cut off. Could you repeat?
Oh.
Defaced is the last words that we heard.
Sorry, my internet says it's unstable. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, if you want, maybe you can cut out your picture and it'll help you with your...
Yeah, I think my computer's getting hot. So
Okay.
We do have an officer that is very proactive as it relates to conducting enforcement on graffiti vandalism. And I know he's actually working a lead on that case, even though it's the property of Caltrans. Obviously, it's in the city of San Jose, and some of those taggers are prolific. And so we do not have a unit dedicated specifically to graffiti enforcement, but we have taken notice, and we are working on on an active investigation, is my understanding.
Thank you. And I could tell you that I have worked on graffiti for many years while being in office, worked with Caltrans, and we convinced them, actually, working with Senator Bell's office, to actually use the same graffiti cleaning company, and at least the graffiti is coming out faster, unless it's in hard to reach places like on walls. So they use the same company that we do, and it's faster. They get to it faster than they used to. Last question.
All right, last rapid fire question is from Ted. It's a simple one. What is SJPD doing to address vehicle break-ins specifically?
Well, right now, to address vehicle break-ins, we are actively engaging the community in trying to set up neighborhood watch. The more eyes and ears that are out there keeping an eye on things and reporting criminal activity, so we get that information in a timely manner, is extremely important. So our crime prevention unit is very busy trying to work and engage the community. We also encourage community members to be part of the camera registry program. So if you do have cameras, I actually get a lot of emails from residents who are sending me pictures, really good physical evidence as it relates to people maybe that broke into a car. When I know there is an uptick in an area, I do bring it to the attention of our midnight watch, and those officers do spend some proactive time in there, and they do report back to me on that. So it's a matter of a saturation, right, if and when we have those resources available. And if we do get a lead, then we do follow up. I know there was a case where we arrested 1 or 2 subjects that were responsible for car break-ins down around the 101, 85 area. So, as far as having a unit specifically dedicated to that, we do not. Certainly, we need to prioritize our violent crime proactivity and enforcement over the nonviolent crime. But that said, it's still an important thing. So we are engaging the community and really doing everything we can with the resources we have, as well as educating the public, right, about how to safeguard their vehicle as well and remove valuables. Certainly, that's part of it.
And Captain, I'm sorry, I'm adding one question that's from me. Years ago, I made 2 years in a row, I made requests to add license plate readers to the arsenal, basically, or the tools to cars, that you could put them on the cars. I've never heard that they've been implemented. I know that I got you guys funded for like 20 of them. Do you guys have those license plate readers active on your cars?
So I don't know. I know we had some at some point. I know it was certainly, I think every division had one vehicle. I had heard that company went out of business, so I'm not sure the current state of our LPRs. I know we had them at one point. I'm going to follow up and I'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I got them funded 2 years in a row, and that was about 4 years ago. So in any case, anyway, I just wanted to follow up. Well, this is the end, and I want to thank you so much, Captain, for taking the time out of your busy day. I know that you're out there fighting crime, and you guys are our heroes. Please give our best to the police force and thank them for, putting their lives on the line every day for our community. Maybe we'll have you on again, because we actually still have even more questions trickling in here. I also want to thank everybody for viewing this evening's Community Connections, and I want to thank my staff and my intern, Adrian, who's doing a phenomenal job here handling this entire event. So thank you, Amal and Shane and my staff that's tuned in. So if you have any questions, and I often post a lot of things about crime, and important information in our newsletters. If you've missed any of them, go to our website, sjd10.com. And my monthly community meeting and office hours are on the first Wednesday and the second Saturday of each month. So the next ones are going to be October 7th at 8:30 a.m. and October 10th at 10 a.m. Again, visit us at our website. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, everybody.